G'day guys, Steve Morgan for Fishing Monthly Magazines here on the main highway through Rockhampton, a big bridge over the Fitzroy River. This is one of Australia's most compact and productive barramundi fisheries, and because it's one of the new Queensland net-free zones, it's only going to get better and better as years come on. You can see we've got accommodation in the middle of town right here. We've got the bridges over these rock bars, and check out that incredible structure which is just below the barrage upstream here. We're going to catch up with a few locals and a few of the experts here in town to find out just how good this area is and how good it's going to be.
So the net-free zones in Rockhampton and the surrounding area, if you like, encompass north of Yeppoon at Corio Bay and then all the way down to the coast to Port Alma, and essentially Port Alma is the estuary that links the Fitzroy River with Gladstone, if you like. The reason that this place is so significant and the reason that it's so good as far as barramundi is concerned, and for that matter threadfin salmon, is because of the recruitment that it captures when we have a big flood event. So if we have a big flood event here, it's not just the river flows. All around the outside of Rockhampton there's little lagoons that all link up, and we call it the link system, if you like. It breaks its banks north of the barrage. The river then breaks right through and comes right around the outside, so around Gracemere, if you like, and then down into the river system here. That allows the fish to go all the way around. Once those fish go all the way around, they're out of the main flow of the river. So they can get out, they can spread out, and when they breed, and there's lots of little fingerlings going everywhere, after that major flood, there's fish all over the system and all in those wetlands and plains and everything else as it starts to settle down after the flood. Those fish all get left in those little billabongs. They then grow out. When they grow out, and then we have a small flood, or what we call a small flood after that, where just the river flows and the smaller and surrounding creeks run, those fish then get put back into the river. When they come back into the river, then they're into the system again, and then the cycle starts all over again. Now this might only be a 1 in 25 or 1 in 100 year event that this is a major flood, but for us, we've been lucky, I guess, that we've had 2 or 3 of those in the last 10 or 15 years, and that means that there's been a bigger recruitment of fish in the system. And luckily enough for us, when the net-free zone was implemented here in, let's say, February of this year, there was a small flow which allowed some of the lagoons out here to release the fish that were in that lagoon down through Gabriel Creek and into the river, and then just recently, about 2 months ago, exactly the same thing happened again, and that's why you can see the colour of that river at the moment is brown. It's still under the influence of that freshwater flow, but all those barra that were out there in those lagoons have now been deposited back into the river, and as far as I can see, that's all good, and thumbs up for the future.
The fishing previous to nets, it was good, but once those fish sort of got to legal size, they were pulled out of the system, and we got a lot of little fish, but the bigger fish just weren't here. What the situation will be now is those bigger fish will be in the system, and it will be an amazing fishery, from your small juvenile fish through to your metre 10, metre 20 fish. Those trophy size fish will just be here, and they'll be in abundance. So it'll be a time for people to come here if you want to catch metre barra in the middle of town. It wouldn't be a better opportunity to do it.
I think it's important to remember with Keppel Bay and the Rockhampton region that it's not just barra. There's all sorts of fishing here, from reef to GTs, pelagics to the barra to the whiting. There's everything you can do here in a few days.
The river works on a tidal system, obviously, but when we have a really, really big tide, it pushes the water right up the top here, and the water comes, right up. You've got a big, big tide. When you've got a little tide or a neap tide, the water doesn't really get influenced too much up here, and the water just goes up and down, but it doesn't actually flow. So those fish are always constantly, and when I'm talking about threadfin salmon here, we're talking about dew, grunter, barramundi, all sorts of different species. They are looking for bait up and down that river. Now the river's 53 kilometres long, so if all the bait is down the front of the river, not much use all the fish being up here. It's like being at a restaurant when it's closed, if you like. So all the fish are down there looking for bait. When they find it, when the bait moves up the river, and it moves up with salinity levels and all different sorts of things, when there's a little flow and Morse Creek or Gabriel Creek run a bit of fresh water into here, there's more bait goes into the river, then there's more fish coming up looking for that bait that's coming out of the freshwater lagoon. So they know when all that's happening, they're traversing up and down the river all the time, so they're moving up and down that river tidal, weekly, monthly, whatever. So those fish are moving all the time. When there's nets in the river, every time they move and every time they go somewhere, they get caught. So then there's less fish. So over the course of a year, when fish are moving up and down that river trying to find bait and they're going up and down, they're getting caught, the numbers are going down, down, down. If there's no recruitment and there's no more fish breeding and there's no fish going back into the system, the numbers keep going down, down, down till eventually there's no fish. Now we thought it was going to take about 2 years to notice a difference in the fish in the river and the numbers starting to increase. Over the 4 years after February, we noticed that the fish that went up and down, or down the bottom if you like, and came back up the top, the fish were the same. So all the fish that went down got to come back again because they weren't getting taken out of the system. So it appeared like there was more fish. There's probably not more fish, it's just the main number of fish that are in the river get to go up and down the system more freely and they're not being taken out.
Well, at the moment we're basically bang smack in the middle of Rockhampton. We've just put in the boat and we've driven a couple of 100 metres, and for a family-friendly destination, it's amazing where your wife and your kids can go down and spend the day at your poon, go to the movies, go shopping. You put the boat in, you fish for a few hours, and your wife's happy, your kids are happy, and you're happy you've caught 10, 15 barra, possibly a metre barra. The opportunity is breathtaking, really, for the advantages for everybody, the whole family, I think.
So as you can see over my right shoulder there, that's the actual barrage. It was built in the 1960s to give Rockhampton a permanent water supply. So on this side of the barrage we've got fresh water, and on that side we've got salt water, and that in turn has created a very unique fishery. Like I said, on that side there's salt water and about 2 kilometres of rock bar there. The fish come up the salt water. When they come up the salt water, especially when there's a big low pressure system coming, they know that fresh water is going to come over that barrage there. They open the gates on the barrage, the fresh water starts to spill in. And on a normal river situation, you'd have a tide coming up, fresh water coming down, you'd get them meet, and they'd meet up and down the river, and that would vary how far up and down the river they go depending on how big the tide is. This is completely different. It can be salty one day, boom, completely fresh the next. So like I said, a very unique fishery. At the end of the day, and this only happened about 3 months ago, just down there in the boat ramp, a bloke said to me, this is like it was 25 years ago. You can finish work at 5 o'clock, you can put the boat in, you can duck down here under the bridge, you can catch 2 threadfin salmon, 800 long, go home and cook them for tea. There's not many places where you can do that. And barramundi's the same thing. About 10 weeks ago probably, up here in the middle of the town, there's a massive rock bar up there, probably goes for 2 kilometres. Amongst that rock bar, obviously there's holes, there's ledges, there's plenty of little spaces there for barra to hold up, and they do love rock bars. At the end of the day, all fishermen know that barramundi love structure. That is a massive rock bar. You go to any sort of a creek or a river system in Australia, and that is a very significant rock bar. So the fish come up to that rock bar, they sit there, and they might be there for 2 weeks. While they're there for 2 weeks, once the locals get onto it, they're all out there fishing. And look, a lot of these fish are caught and put back, so they're caught multiple times. But to be able to catch fish of that sort of size and that sort of significance right in the middle of town while you're watching people drive to work and walk along the riverbank, it's pretty unique.
If you can throw plastics, you can throw top water, you can throw hard bodies, you can throw any style of lure that you're comfortable with. You can throw, like, a good advantage was I had a guy that come up and he was a snapper fisherman. His skills for snapper fishing crossed over, made a brilliant barra fisherman. So it's what you're familiar with from your local waters. If you're familiar with fishing bait, grab a big mullet, put it out on a float, put it on the bottom. Your chances of a big kingy or barra are just as good as if you're throwing a hard body.
When the fishing's on, these sort of things happen not gradually, they happen very quickly. So these fish, I never realised how fast fish and barra in particular move up and down the system. I used to think, oh yeah, they come, they move a week, they go another week, they move a little bit, they go a week, they move another little bit. I don't think that's right. I think fish come, and when they want to go somewhere, they just go. So they might travel 40 or 50 kilometres in a very, very short period of time. So you could be fishing up around the rocks there on a Friday afternoon, having a bit of a go with your vibe and not really catching anything. The following Saturday, you could go down there and there'll be 30 barra all sitting just along the front of that old bridge there that weren't there the afternoon before. They've just come on that night tide and they're there. You might think that that's the only fish. On the next tide there might be another 50 or 60 come, and before you know it there's about 500 barra all sitting up around that rock bar there that are all a metre long. It happened about 10 weeks ago. There was a couple of young fellas started catching them on a weekend. They were out there in kayaks and small tinnies and started to put it on Facebook, and then there's barra there a metre long, and everyone went, what's going on here? That next week or 10 days there would have been 60 barra over a metre caught up there between the bridges. Absolutely unbelievable, and probably I would say unheard of. I've never seen that many or heard of that many fish of that magnitude caught in that area in the last 50 years, so it's pretty special.
For barra fishing for Queensland, the legal size limit for a barramundi is 58 centimetres and the maximum size limit is 120 centimetres. There is that closed season between November 1st of November and the 1st of February, so you have got that 3-month period where it's a closed season for targeting barramundi.
Now don't quote me on the numbers, but I think over the last sort of 4 or 5 years there's been on average about 100 tonne of fish taken out of a system. Now this system, you might think 53 kilometres is a big area, and granted 53 kilometres if you're walking is quite a significant distance, but if you're flying in a plane, well, it's not that far. But at the end of the day, 500 tonne of fish. Can you imagine how many fish are in 1 tonne or a half a tonne? And think that these fish are only maybe 5 or 6 kilo on average. So have a bit of a think about that. 1,000 kilos to a tonne, 500 tonne. It's a lot of fish. Now the Rocky Barra Bounty's been running about 15 or 16 years, and it's a really good way for us to gauge how healthy the river is as far as barramundi content is concerned, if you like. So every year there's 150 anglers get out there and fish and catch as many barra as they can, tag them, record all the data and let them all go. Now over the last 5 years, let's say from 2010, there was an absolute mega year, and it was the year that the Barra Bounty was held after that significant rain event and the whole joint was completely flooded. 1,209 barra were caught in 2 days. Absolutely unprecedented. The following years after that, and this is when the nets were in, we watched the numbers fall to 900, 600, 400, 300, and you could see that it was significantly going down. There was no significant floods in those ensuing years. So you can see the difference, and you can see how much it is influenced by how many fish are taken out. And it's all, like I said before, it's all about recruitment. You need those fish to be able to breed, get them back in and keep the numbers up. So if you can keep the numbers up, not only are you keeping the numbers of small fish up, but you're keeping the numbers of breeding fish up, or potential breeders within your system. So it's pretty significant, and the bounty is a really, really good way of judging just how healthy the river is and how many fish there are. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this year there should be more fish, and at absolute worst scenario there should be the same amount of fish as last year.
Well, these front beaches here, particularly leading closer to the Fitzroy River, we've had some beach netting, mullet, blue salmon, occasionally barramundi. And there was a little bit of netting in the bay itself, but there wasn't a lot of netting in the bay. But really the Fitzroy and the estuaries were in many ways the fish pump, the fish source for the bay. So reduction in netting there increases biomass along these beaches.
So years ago, everybody was pretty clued up that the impoundment barra scene was going to take off, and there was going to be millions and millions of barra in all these dams up and down the coast. Awonga Dam was a prime example. It was absolutely a mecca for barramundi. For about 6 or 7 years there was barramundi in Awonga Dam as thick as thieves. As that sort of time went on, those fish got smarter, there was less and less fish, the fish got harder to catch, and let's say the people that were coming to catch the fish were not catching them as easy, so it was down to the die-hard fishermen to get down there and try and catch them. Then we had a major flood there, and all the fish went over the wall and they were gone. That fishery is now stagnant or in its rebuilding phase, if you like. So it might be another couple of years before Awonga comes back online. Those fish that went out went into the wild, and a lot of them got caught, but a lot of them are still in the wild. What we have now is we have the same sort of scenario in the river, but we have it in a wild river. It's not an impoundment. These fish are free to go up and down and do whatever they want to do. And as long as they breed and as long as those numbers keep increasing, this will be an absolute mecca for recreational fishing in Queensland, and it's central to Queensland. So if you're from Brisbane, you're from Bundaberg, you're from Mackay or Townsville, you're still only 5 or 6 hours away from coming here. It's not like when you go into the Gulf, you've got to fly into Darwin, you're doing all that sort of stuff. It's a long way away and it takes a lot more organising. This could potentially be done on a long weekend or even on a normal weekend. Friday afternoon, fly up, jump on a boat, go for a fish, catch some fish, jump on a plane Sunday, be back down to work on Monday. It's as simple as that.
Like, as well as the net-free zone, I think there's a compelling case now to bring your boat up for maybe a week or so, because there's such a variety of fishing you can do, as well as the barra and the river. There's all the inshore islands, the offshore islands, our creeks and estuaries. So, you know, you could bring gear from GT popping to whiting to barra gear. You could bring it all and you could use it every single day. You could do something different for a week, and that'd be just a fantastic time with your family. You haven't had to go to the Gulf, you haven't spent a fortune, you've just wandered up the road for a day's drive and you're into it.
Yeah, if I was a fisherman from down south heading north, I'd stop in at the Fitzroy. It's easy access, there's chances of big saltwater barramundi, and there's no reason to go any further.